the topic of the Council of Nicea actually had nothing to do with the books of the Bible. So the books of the Bible had already been established centuries before.
Not for the Roman Empire, though.
What do you mean?
Meaning this is where the Roman Empire officially kind of makes their shift to like, yay, we're Christians now, right? Like that's...
So it isn't.
It isn't.
No. So Constantine converts to Christianity, but he doesn't make Christianity the imperial religion of Rome. That's
right, not lawfully, right?
So this is an example of how you can be right and wrong at the same time, but in your right, you make your wrong seem like it's right as well in order to validate your religion. So in the beginning of this video, Wes Huff is actually correct in saying that the Council of Nicea actually had very little to nothing to do with the canonization of the books of the Bible. Oddly enough, this is something that we just talked about on a live on Tuesday, but so he's right. It has absolutely nothing to do with the canon for the most part. The Council of Nicea was about establishing the Trinity and organizing Christianity under the Orthodox Romans who were in support of the Roman Empire that was under Constantine at this moment. But Constantine wasn't a Christian. That part I take issue with, as well as the fact that he's saying that the Bible had already been, the books of the Bible had already been established. No, they were not. They were not established. And he's going to go on later to describe what he's actually talking about, and I'll come back and correct that part. But for right now, let's talk about the fact that Constantine never converted over to Christianity while he was alive. And I must emphasize the while he was alive. See, although if you were to read some of the apologists and Christian scholars, the Catholic scholars, they will say that Constantine in 313, when he battled Maxentius at the Bridge of Moldova, that he converted over to Christianity because he saw the cross in the sky, the soldiers painted crosses on their shields, and Jesus visited him, or Sol Invictus, and visited him in his tent prior to the battle and told him that in this symbol you will conquer. And then years later, he has the Edict of Milan, which makes Christianity, as well as many other religions, legal in the Roman Empire. And then in 325 calls for the Council of Nicea. Athanasius then publishes 27 books that he believes should be the canon, and it's not until the Council of Rome in 382 or somewhere around that, 382 that the Council of Rome then establishes the canon, and then there are consecutive councils after that reaffirm the canon. But Constantine, whose mother had converted over to Christianity, she established many churches in Jerusalem. She, according to legend, had his body baptized after he died, but Constantine's never converted. Here's a couple of things to prove. One thing to prove that Constantine never converted over to Christianity. Now, I've actually seen it myself, but this is a piece of the ark of Constantine as a triumphant victory that he had over Maxentius at the Battle of Moldova. Look on the shields of the soldiers to the upper left. Do you see crosses on those shields? You do not see crosses on those shields. And if he had converted over to Christianity, because this was built in 315 CE, he converted according to Catholic teachings and Roman teachings and Christian teachings in 313, there would have been crosses on the shield, but yet there are no crosses on the shield. And if you were to go and visit, and as you see at the bottom here, there are other gods that are represented on the Ark of Constantine. You have the god Apollo, who is represented there. Also, with sacrifices to Apollo is on Constantine's Ark. You also have the goddess Diana. She is represented on Constantine's Ark. You also have the demigod of Hercules, who is represented on Constantine's Ark, as well as Salvinus, the goddess of the god of the woods, of wood. He is also represented on Constantine's Ark. So if Constantine had converted over to Christianity, then when his triumphant ark was built in 315, then he would have had Christian symbols on there, but there are absolutely zero Christian symbols on there. There is just the continuation of Roman gods and goddesses on Constantine's ark, and there are no crosses on this ark. So Constantine did not convert over to Christianity in 313, as well as when you go throughout the European landscape of what was the Roman Empire at that time frame, you see that Constantine built many more memorials to Sol Invictus, to Apollo, and to himself. He never built any memorial that would indicate that he had converted over to Christianity in all the years that he claimed that they are claiming that he was a Christian. But let's get into the fact of the canonization of the Bible. I'll let you hear what Wes had to say, and then we'll come back to it.
Oh, within the second century. Within the second century,
But for the Roman Empire, though, because they were still torturing Christians at that time.
But the Roman Empire is still pagan by the time you get the Edict of Milan and the decriminalization of Christianity.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So what? So how would they have? How would the Roman Empire have gotten along with the acceptance of what the Gospels are?
Oh, they don't. No, this is established by Christianity.
Yes.
So Christians.
I know that.
So Christians already have the 27 books that we call the New Testament.
And who would you say established that? Like, it may not be one person, but like, what people said, yo, this is what we're going with?
So there are lots of canon lists within the early church. So because the earliest Christians were Jews, there was an understanding that the promises that God makes, you might have heard the word covenant before. So the covenant that God makes are always followed up by written documentation. So God makes a covenant with Moses, and you have the literal inscription in the tablets, right?
Yes.
And then you have the law, you have the Torah, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, that come together with that. And then when you have the prophets declaring things to the people and declaring truths that God is telling the people of Israel, sometimes it literally says, inscribe this on a tablet, write this on a scroll. And so there's always an understanding between the promises of God and written documentation that led up to that. And so when you have Jesus come on the scene and he establishes the new covenant, which was prophesied in Jeremiah 31:31, which says, God says, I'm going to make a new covenant with my people, and I'm going to inscribe the law in their hearts. So they're not going to need the written law in the same way. They're going to live in a different way. And so that's the cultural expectation during Jesus' day, is that the Messiah would come and he would establish this new covenant. Because the Old Testament...
There was so much dancing around on that one. I felt like I've been in a Zumba class or something. Because, oh my gosh, I am ready to go out and do the salsa. So as you saw, he danced around the fact that he had made the statement or the claim that there were different canon lists that were out there, but tried to indicate that they already had all the books of the Bible. By the second century. No. So the first thing that you have to understand is that there were many canon lists. He's absolutely right that there were many canon lists out there. One of the most prominent ones being that of Marcion. But to suggest that they had all the books, no. Justin Martyr in 150 mentions that they have the wisdom of the apostles. Irenaeus is the first one to, in 182, to give them names such as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But we have to understand that the Gospel of Marcion is possibly either an edited version of Luke, or Luke is an elongated version of the Gospel of Marcion. So there was still debate out there as to what was the canon. And Marcion's list only had 10 of Paul's letters. And we know that Paul truly only wrote 7 of them. But so and the Marcions have been considered heretics. We know that the Gnostics also had their list, whether we're talking about the Gospel of Thomas and the secret writings of James. And so there were many different writings out there. So if you want to say that there were a bunch of writings, sure. But to suggest that there was some cohesion of Christianity, that Christians had it written on their hearts and didn't need this information to be written down in textual form, is just you making up this golden era, this golden age of Christianity, which never existed, that there were as many different Christians out there as there are Christians out there today. The only difference is the most of them had multiple canons that was vastly different. Many of them accepted the Book of Enoch, whereas many did not accept the Book of Enoch. And it wasn't until the canon was closed before the Book of Enoch was excluded from most of these writings. The Book of Jasher, and there's so many other, Book of Jubilees, that many Christians was reading books from all over. And their canon was not until the 4th century CE. Stop the madness, stop the lying, stop the dancing. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.